Presently back here in Watkinsville, Georgia, to check up on what was my hangout spot. Whenever I was over here with my dad around 15 or so years ago, we'd both come up here and walk these tracks when the trains weren't running. Well, as you can see, ever since they started the work in Athens to fix the trackage there, this has gotten a little tired looking. I know I came up here a while ago and started clearing weeds when it was starting to get grown in, but now that's changed significantly. This was the old wood yard, this huge empty lot. There was a siding going into it, but that was removed recently. And they were gonna reinstall the siding, but I don't know if that's still planned or if that fell through or what. But I'm out here taking photos both digitally and analog. I can thank my mother for that one. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, and I'm documenting all this in case the line is genuinely labeled as abandoned and gets removed or gets rebuilt after it comes out of mothball. Plus the lighting is just too good not to come out here and photograph stuff. The other camera in my hand is out of film at the moment. And what I mean by out is I mean I used all of it. So I'm using the camera for the rest, but I can see kudzu starting to come in, or some other kind of viney plant. I'm seeing a lot of weed growth, trees down, limbs down. I know that tree over there is looking to be a bit of an issue. I'm checking that. That's one reason I'm coming over here. So yeah, I'm gonna get another photo here. So that was a darker photo. Damn, I hate these weeds. But I'm glad I wore jeans, so that makes this a hell of a lot easier to get through. That's why the camera's moving. I'm just dealing with the weeds. Tons of removed rail stacked up right there, probably from the siding that was in the wood yard. Of course, all these switches are locked, which is good. That's really good. But this is what the rest of the Bishop to Madison branch would be looking like right about now in winter. All the leaves dying out, and this is what you get. I'm angling the camera up to try and get the kind of color saturation I want. That's why you see me moving it up and down slightly and hear it blink, and that's so it'll select and hold the color gradient it's set at so that I can get the pictures. And also, from this point forward, all the pictures are going to have the date and time stamped in the right-hand corner. They're in orange. Whether or not the time is right, I don't know, but it's the date that counts. I am seeing a lot of photographic opportunity with the growth, the lighting, and everything else. And here's the big limb in the room, or should I say limb on the track. That must have fallen last windstorm we had, or it's dead one, but that's going to be a bit of a pickle to get cleared out. I'm sure the railroad's got some equipment they can use, like a crane or a excavator. But yep, so Zhenya, if you see this, you might want to get some guys out here and at least get this removed. That way y'all don't have to deal with it later when this does get reactivated. And before I say it, this line is not abandoned. Right now it's just mothballed because up in Athens they're doing work on some of the trackage coming into downtown from the CSX at Diamond. And they're also having to rebuild a bridge that had to be torn down due to damage it sustained in a truck strike. It was an old wood bridge right there in the middle of town where a yard used to be. They had to tear it down due to the damage being more severe than they thought, and it just went from there. Here's another shot of that tree, which I'll get a photograph of for Xinya's sake. Plus, it's too good not to photograph in this lighting. And here is looking ahead. Quite literally, I might add. Once again, moving over to get the shot I need. And there's the color gradient I want. If you notice, we're in the video where it's now a lot clearer, a lot sharper. That's what I'm looking for. If I back up, hopefully without tripping, I can get the feed mill's standpipe in the shot. A little bit more, probably on this old spur. Right back a bit. There we go. Now let me try again. See, that's the thing with photography. You gotta sort of plan out how you want the picture to look in advance. A lot of well-known photographers do that, but with me, I do it as I go along because it makes it more, a lot more interesting. Panning up more to get the color I want. And now. Yeah, this feed mill, you see the silo stack of, was derelict for a while. But someone recently came in and bought it, and I think it's now a shop or a residence or a mixture of both, which is nice. I'm glad they saved it instead of tearing it down to put something else in its place. And here's the silos, the old Butler silos, and as you can see, their little ventilation fan to keep the grain aerated is still working, despite like no lubrication at all, which is nice. Unless that was recent, I don't know. But I remember the name Butler used to be on that silo there to the left. It's now obscured. I remember that name being visible for many years, even after the silo and plant closed. Of course, it was already closed when I was growing up, so, you know, it's not like I can speak with nostalgia. Childhood nostalgia maybe, but not anything more than that. I'm currently walking in the railroad drainage ditch for this. Let me step back here. Ow! Briars. Hate those things. Okay. Alright, this should be, yeah, this should work nicely. Plus it's lit the way I want it, which will make this very, very easier. There we go. Now walking back up onto the roadbed. There's the actual mill building itself. Not really much to it. There is an old offloading auger on the siding that's still in place. I don't think they ever filled it in. Yeah, no, there it is. I can see it. It's on that concrete pad in the foreground of the tracks. Yeah, here it is. So if you guys ever wondered how these small mills actually offloaded grain from the cars, this is how. Hoppers would be parked over here, over this auger. It would spin as the grain fell in. The spinning auger would, as it would with water, it would take the grain from here, move it up this pipe you see here, which would then be fed into these silos, one on the left and one on the right. And then there would have been, I think, blowers or conveyors or something along that line that would get the grain from these silos over here to the mill, where it would be cleaned, strained, processed, and bagged, and then weighed, and then readied for shipment out of Watkinsville, either by rail or by road. One of the two, whatever they used in the end. Of course, now both of its original purposes are gone. sadly. This is where part 1 ends and part 2 will start. Continuing from the prior recording. Yeah, I remember having a lot of memories walking these tracks when I was coming up. My dad lived here for a brief period early in my life, and we'd come up here and walk the tracks off and on. There would be times we'd come up here and there's small trains parked out here. There's a ghost spur, probably to Athens Seed, which still exists. Probably when they used to get rail shipments, now road, of course. There we go. As you can see, its switch would have been pretty much right in here, probably right there in front of the mill, which, of course, that's now gone. Also gone now is the old cement plant that used to be across the tracks up there off to the left. That was actually abandoned for a few years, and then they recently came in and tore it down, I'd say about 1, maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember, but that's also gone. So now that we're in the clear part of track, it's time to look back, literally. So here, standing in between, you have the grain silo spur right here on the right. Excuse me, not the right, that's the right, that's the left, my mistake. You can see this was the passing siding for the main line, which is off to the right, covered in growth. The reason for this long passing siding is because, one, you had all these industries trackside on the left, as well as the depot, which is gone. And then you also had, and it would make a lot of those switching moves for these industries a lot easier to do, and you wouldn't be clogging up what was the main line to Madison, Georgia. There are some spurs that once connected into this, but as they either went out of business or shipped to trucking, those left as well, leaving what you have now. Yeah, and the camera has an extra film roll, but I'm not going to go back and get it and then do all of these photos I'm doing on my digital camera again in film. Plus, I'm still new to the film thing. So everything I photograph with the film camera is purely experimental and testing, just to get my fingers wet, so to speak. Oh, now the lighting is really good. Camera is going semi-vertical. I'm actually standing on some old railroad iron for this. If I didn't have to worry about how this camera shows the pictures in terms of their color and lighting, I wouldn't do all of the editing I have to do on them. In terms of the lighting and color correction you guys see me do. The only reason, that's actually the only reason I do this editing period, is because a lot of times the photos are taken in lighting that just usually wouldn't be preferred by other photographers. I just go with what I have. I go with what I can work with. See, right now, for instance, another good shot showing the tree down as well as the old transloading ramp. That's what that wood thing is with the beams. That's an old transloading thing. I can't remember if Virginia said it was for the wood yard or something else, but I'm sure if he sees this video, he will be happy to comment. But I'm hoping I'll live to see this line reactivated, not just to Watkinsville and Athens and back, but also all the way to Madison. Whether that's for freight, general, or excursion use awaits to be seen, but I hope it can be done. Because the thing is, this line may not look like it now, but it does have potential. It's just going to take a lot of money and a lot of time to get it back to a more speedily operational state. What I mean by speedily operational state is that right now I'm sure the line is rated for maybe 10 miles an hour, maybe 15 if you're lucky. But from what I read, when they were going to try to reactivate this all the way to Bishop recently, they were going to try and upgrade all the trackage to about 25 mile per hour operation, which of course would mean that all the rail you see here would have to be removed and replaced because it's just too light a rail. I mean, some of this rail, for instance, look here. Some of this rail is, as evident by this one, for instance, close to 60 or 70 years old. Nowhere near the correct weight for what would be needed nowadays. Plus, you can see just by looking even in the camera where some of it's bent or wavy. That's because it's been heavily used over the years. And here's another rail with another date. Tennessee, something. Well, that's the foundry date, but as well as the foundry, but I can see what might be a date. Let me zoom in. I'm gonna hazard a guess that that's 1955, possibly. I don't see any other markings other than that. But you can see a lot of this rail is fairly old, so I think that's another one right there, actually. 1951. So this is all stick rail or jointed rail, which is something rare on modern railroads. Nowadays, it's very rare to see jointed rail on a Class 1 railroad. Nowadays, it's mostly welded rail or very long stretches of welded rail with a few stubs in between, just to give some expansion and contraction for the metal during hot and cold cycles. So what you're seeing here is rare for Class 1s, but common for short lines, if that makes sense. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, I'm coming off of what was the industrial siding, which would have merged back onto the main. So if this were, say, the Athens line back in 2008, and when those videos by Railscapes Trains and Travel were shot, the engineer for the Athens line would be on this side, while the conductor would be to the left of me, coming off this switch with storage cars. That's what they always used this trackage for later on. As I was growing up, they would just park cars here and store them. Most of the time they were flat cars for truck trailers or intermodal cars, but sometimes you'd have like rail box cars, center beam cars, wood cars, that sort of thing. In Athens, they actually had a spur to the heating plant, which has since been removed, back when they had their plant run off coal, but that's now gone. I heard they replaced that boiler with a gas-powered one, gas electric. Don't know how well that works, but take that as you will. Oh, hello. Look here. Makes for some interesting photography. So, now that we're back where we began, I think I'm going to call this here. So, I will see you all later. Railroad Preserver 2000 in Watkinsville, Georgia. Out. This little spot in a undisclosed location here in Georgia is a place I have memories coming to as a kid years ago. You'd think it's out in the middle of the woods, but in fact it's beside a wood yard, and here it is. This is where I remember spending the night with my grandfather when I was coming up years and years ago, like I'm saying 15 years ago. This was where he lived for a while before moving to a new place on the property. But as you can see, it's in, for lack of a better term, a compromised state. I can remember the only reason this is all still standing is because of the metal roof, but once that falls through, it's done. But I can remember coming up here as a kid, and when we'd have rainstorms, I'd be I get all sorts of cups, coolers, whatever he had out here, set them up right there along the edge of the porch and let the water fill them, and it'd keep me occupied as a kid. He had his wood stove in there, right in that area of the wall where the chimney and all is. Kitchen was there, bathroom was there, bedroom was behind there along with the living room. There was a spare bedroom here, but it never got finished. There was a bathroom there, but it never got finished. A lot of things in this ragtag house never got finished. But that was normal. There's the old garden stone path he had. There was a little barn right here, but I remember staying here one night and it collapsed. What's left of it has been bulldozed right there. That over there was a sand pit that I played in coming up. I remember all this stuff being around here, knickknacks and bobs and whatnot. Yeah, I figured I'd show this real quick. Don't know if I'm going to let this see the light of day, but I mean, if this gets torn down, maybe then, since it'll be gone, but who knows when that'll be. It'll either get torn down by man or torn down by nature, whatever comes first. I can't go in because we've got it locked up tight, but I can show you a partial view inside through the windows in the back. So here's the inside of the place. As you can see, there's really not much to it at all, actually. Yeah, as I said in the first recording of this spot, I remember this. There was a tin roofing all along here. This is all that's left, apart from, but it jutted out a lot further. And I remember when it rained, I'd be out here like 5 or 6 years old getting like stuff like those buckets, cups, pots, whatever he had laying around, and I'd set them all along the edge here. And as the rain dripped off the tin, it would just fill them up and then overflow, and I'd dump them out and let them refill and whatnot. Kept me occupied coming up. And then I remember one year when I was up here during like spring or something, when all the caterpillars were showing up, this cherry tree right here, I remember had a huge colony of caterpillars coming down, and I remember putting the broom handle out from the porch over to the tree, and the caterpillars all running down it over to me so I could play with them and whatnot. I remember that. I think that was shortly before or shortly after the barn collapsed, but yeah, I remember that, among other things. No power, because, well, why would you need any? Yeah, this was the kitchen area. There was never an oven. Or, well, I think the oven was there, the oven or stove was there, or a dishwasher that wasn't even working back then. My grandfather always hand washed this stuff. This was the technical stove. I remember my grandfather using his wood stove, which he still has. He just moved it out of here. I remember him using it to cook on. Still occasionally does. Just for the heck of it. That's now down at his new property, his new place. But I remember it sitting right here. He'd have firewood stacked up outside or sometimes in here. This was the de facto living room. He'd have a I remember he had a bed sitting here, or a TV sitting here. Then he had another bed, which is still right where it was last at, right there. And then, well, I remember there was stuff strode around even when I was coming up, but I think that was all strode around later, people looking for stuff and whatnot. And, sorry, hold on. Yeah, I remember. Sorry, there was some stuff I wanted to save. Yeah, back there was the bathroom. I remember that went out of commission when I was coming up. Never was used again. Or even if it was with whatever water we could get with a hose. I don't remember, to be perfectly honest. I remember the pipes busted one winter and he had to fix all that. He got it working, but I remember all that being enclosed. Anyways, this was the bedroom that I never remembered being used by anybody. No, that there was caused by one of two things. Either that was water damage, or freaking raccoon moved in upstairs and got so freaking fat that it busted through to its weight. Nah, I'm just kidding on that. But it's probably water damage, seeing as there's other spots where the roof has failed and actively failing. Let me go to wide angle. So yeah, this is now being used to store apparently tires and other stuff, but this is as far as I'm treading in here. I'm not going any farther. That was going to be a bathroom, but that never got finished, period. It was always like this when I was coming up and spending the night up here sometimes. That was a closet for all this, probably. And you got old furniture here, probably from the 60s or 70s, given the wood paneling design on it. But yeah, all this was it. And this was, I think, a kind of mobile home, as it were. And then my grandfather later just built onto and extended it into a proper house. Like, it was probably an old double wide, I think, from what I remember reading, or from what he said, and he just later expanded it and whatnot. I don't remember, but yeah, this was more or less it. This was his place for as long as I could remember, until he moved further down to a new place on the property. But anyways, that's more or less where I'm going to leave it. So I will see y'all later. we go.